All right, Christine, all yours.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you everybody for joining. So Jen, you want to give me a quick thumbs up that you're seeing my screen? Perfect. Awesome. So I am delighted to be here with you. So as Jen mentioned, one of the things that I do at HAYVN is run their incubator program, which we call Launch. And part of that is helping people refine their pitch decks. We get a lot of requests for help to do this, and we decided, okay, let's throw it into a lunch and get our basic presentation out there so that it can help you create your pitch deck, refine your messaging, kind of wherever you are in your journey. And I'm going to talk through sort of the basics, sort of pitch deck 101. And then I'm going to introduce Kim Barron, who's also on this call and a member of HAYVN, who is really the person that makes it all come together. So the way we typically do this in our incubator is I'll work with the participants to help them really create their pitch, work on their messaging, make sure that they've really identified their sort of the key value propositions, and then it's still going to look a little bit messy, and then we bring Kim in and she really creates the magic. So she's going to talk to you at the end about that, introduce herself because she's a great resource locally. So let me see. The end, when you're thinking about either raising money or raising the profile of your company, everybody talks about the pitch deck. And the way we think about preparing people for that is that you really need an elevator pitch, you need a 3-minute pitch, a 5-minute pitch, and then the full 12-slide pitch deck. And the end goal is to prepare all of that. I think we kind of do it in reverse order and start with the 12-slide pitch deck, and then we can take things out. Once you feel really confident with your 12-slide deck, it's pretty easy to shorten it into a 3- and 5-minute version. But we always like to start with the elevator pitch. And this is something that the basic script here looks a little Mad Libsy for those of you who grew up with Mad Libs. But a good elevator pitch is something that will feel a little bit forced when you start it. But over time, when you practice it over and over again, you'll realize that you're introducing yourself at the grocery store and you are introducing yourself at networking events, and it kind of comes out of your mouth very naturally, which is, of course, the end goal. But I think a good elevator pitch has these 4 components. A strong intro. My name is, I'm the founder, co-founder, CEO, whatever you're calling yourself, of this company. You want to give a quick overview of what your company does. We're focused on this audience. We solve this problem. We have this solution. Doesn't need to hit every single one of those. It needs to broadly be able to describe what you're doing, what your company is doing, get people interested. Then you close with some fact of interest. It could be, we've had traction in revenues. We've just launched our product. We've just launched our website. Always think to make an ask. And if you want to do that sort of extra at the end, we're different or better because, or the time for us is now because, you can end with something strong there. But over time, I think if we start by the way, you don't need to take screenshots of any of this. We will follow up and send out the deck so you'll have it. But this is a good place to start by just filling this in, practicing it until it feels a little more familiar. So talking through the investor pitch deck, there is a great article that I think summarizes why these are the 12 slides that every deck needs to work on and why the flow is the way it is. And I've linked that on the bottom here. It's a Slide Bean article where they basically compiled and did the research of 500 startups, the Sequoia deck that they recommend, the Airbnb deck, like some of the most famous and successful pitch decks. And they kind of laid them side by side in a grid and said what slides were included, and concluded that these are the 12 that any successful deck really needs to have. So I'm going to go through them on this page, and then we're going to dive in a little more deeply into each of them to give you a sense of what needs to be on it, what makes a successful slide. And then at the end, we're going to talk through a little bit of how you actually shorten it. Once you have the 12, how do we condense that into something smaller? Because I think if you're in the market where you're trying to network and talk more about your business, you'll see that there are innumerable ways and opportunities that you'll have to pitch, and each competition is a little bit different. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So the first slide, always going to be your intro. It's going to be a nice, broad, bright logo. Maybe it just has your company name. Maybe it has a slogan. It could have some information about the founders. And then you're going to go very quickly into a problem and solution methodology of introducing your company. And I have to say that for some people, including myself, when I started doing this work, that never seemed like the right way to go. It always seemed to me like you're starting out with a problem is going to make the wrong first impression. You know, I would have always preferred to start on a positive note, but I think you'll see and if we look first at some pitch decks and how they've been developed, you start with the problem that justifies the reason that you're all there having the conversation, and you very quickly migrate into solution and then build on that solution so that by the end, you absolutely are ending on a very strong note. But you're going to use the problem slide in a really strategic way, which I'll talk about. So you introduce the problem and then you pivot to your solution. That can be an introduction to your mission, vision, product, however you want to look at it. But you'll describe very carefully what it is that you are doing in a way that people understand. Then we talk about your market slide. I think that's one of the most important slides to have in here because it's going to have data and statistics that support what you're doing. And it's the kind of thing that people can do, get research from a variety of sources, but you really want to make sure that you have numbers that are verifiable and inarguable on that slide. The business model is how you make money. So you want to make sure that at the end of the day, people understand what you do and how you're planning to make money. Traction is where you are on your journey. So what have you done that's given you, that's made you believe that you should be taking this idea to the next level? Do you have customers? If you're an online business, what kind of metrics do you have traction on when you look at your website? Then competition, and you need to nail this. You need to make sure that by the end of your pitch, people believe that you are the expert in your industry, that you've surveyed it, you understand what your competitors are doing, you understand what funds they're raising, you know, kind of your competitive situation versus theirs. Then your go-to-market strategy, which could also be a timeline if you are in the market of what milestones you're planning to get to with this next level of funding. Then financials and sort of owning your financials, very important. Then you need a team slide to wrap it up because people are more likely to invest in teams than solopreneurs. And you can go to some milestones that you're projecting for. So we're going to dive into each of these. And for those of you who are joining mid-chat, we will be sending out the slides. So problem and solution. So what is the key problem that your business is trying to solve? Now, I've given a couple examples here. So when I think about Netflix, when Netflix started, which was a long time ago, nobody was saying, oh, I really need some way to be streaming videos right onto my TV at home. That wasn't the problem that they were having. The problem that they were having, if you're anything like me, is that you were going to the video store, you were renting 3 videos, you were bringing them home, watching one of them, paying late fees on the other 2, then sitting there looking at them saying, am I really going to pay late fees and return these without having seen them, which just compounded the problem until you banned yourself from the video store. That's the pain point. That is what people were feeling that inspired Netflix to start this alternative service. Similarly with Blue Apron, if you think about the problem that Blue Apron was trying to solve, it wasn't necessarily that somebody was sitting in their kitchen saying, hey, I really wish somebody would deliver to my door and dinner with recipes that I can cook tonight. They were thinking the problem that they were feeling was, I like cooking. I like providing healthy meals for my family, but I just don't have the time. So how can I make time? And Blue Apron and all of the meal delivery kits solve that. So when you think about problem solution, a lot of people have tried to start a business because of a problem that they felt personally. And it's really important and difficult to sort of get outside your head to think, is this just a significant problem for me, or is this something that impacts a lot of people? Now, the problem solution slide is, I don't know how to emphasize this well enough, but it is possibly the most important part of your presentation. Because if people aren't with you on the problem and then pivoting to your solution, you're kind of going to lose them on the rest. So it's really important to spend time on describing your problem in a way that people understand it quickly and it engages them to continue to learn more. I read this research piece that I've kind of highlighted the key parts, the key conclusion on what makes a good problem slide. And you'll see at the top, the red bar is how investors related it, how investors rated each of these categories. And the gray bar is how consultants rated it. So it's not necessarily that interesting to me to see the difference, other than they both, were pretty aligned. But empathizing with the target market is the number one goal of a good problem slide. I think investors care, a little bit more than others that there's data and facts around that, because that goes to, it's a problem that you feel, and there's data to support that that problem is felt more broadly than just you. Thirdly, and I think this is important, is to use short and powerful writing with no jargon. The one mistake I think that I've seen people make, and I try to coach away, is that by the time you're delivering your pitch deck, you are such an expert in everything around your business, your market, your customers, your suppliers. And people think of this slide deck or the opportunity to pitch as an opportunity to showcase how smart they are about their business. And you can imagine what that sometimes translates to. It often comes off as jargony or too esoteric, or the depth that you're using to describe the problems and solutions is not understandable to somebody who's casually learning this for the first time. And the number one thing we all know is when a presenter makes us feel stupid, we are not engaged. So if we focus on number 1, 2, and 3, we need to articulate our problem in a way that the person we're presenting to empathizes and understands it, that it's supported by good data, and that it's not intimidating people and creating distance. You want to bring people in and want them to feel like they want to learn more. So here's 2 examples, the one on the left, and if we had more time, I would go through the Airbnb pitch deck, because a lot of people that I see spend a lot of time on money making a very fancy pitch deck. But what's on the left here, this problem slide, comes directly from the Airbnb slide deck. It's their original one. It's quite old. It's very simple. It's really just text on a white background with a blue border. But we've all tried Airbnb, and this is what they went to the market with successfully. But the problem was that price is an important concern for customers looking to travel. Hotels really do leave you disconnected from the city. They don't give you that personal feeling, and that there's just no easy way that exists to book a room with a local or to become a host. So I think everybody probably that resonates with, probably more than now, because we have Airbnb. On the right, this is another online property manager. And they articulated something similar, but a little bit differently. Do-it-yourself landlords, which 80% of the market chooses, is very cheap, but it's a lot of work. Property management companies, which 20% of the market uses, is easy, but very expensive. So that company provided a solution that sort of thread the needle in between the do-it-yourself and the property managers. So I think these are two good examples. And again, you want to make sure it's understandable. I think we'd agree these are two good examples for that. Then you pivot away from problem, and the rest of the presentation should be product and solution oriented. So here's the chance for you to make your big introduction to your company, to your solution, to your product, however you're thinking about it. It's also a good time to share the vision for the company, why you are there. And often the conversation in the pitch goes from, here's a problem that we noticed in the industry. This is the research we did, and bang, we're here to introduce you to our company. This is what we do. This is our mission. This is our vision. You don't need to, obviously, that's not a checklist. It's more a suggested flow of things, of the conversation that ends up to be engaging with the audience. As you're doing your slides, I would say, and I'm sure Kim will agree at the end, that my slides that I'm giving to you are designed so that when I send these to you later, they will be a resource and a checklist. They're not a good example of an investor pitch deck in terms of how many words there are on the slides, and Kim can talk about that a little more. But as you're creating your slide and creating your speech that goes along with this, you need to be super targeted in terms of, at the end of this slide, does your audience understand how your solution is tied to the problem that you spent time getting them engaged and caring about when you started? And secondarily, how unique you are. And does it make sense in the world that we're in? Every slide needs to sort of hit those metrics. Like, does this meet me where I am in terms of understanding the solution? And does it make sense in terms of what I know of the world and the problem? So then we're talking about your business model. So again, this is how you make money. And usually it's fairly simple. Usually if you're a cupcake store, a bakery, you're selling that product. But for other businesses, particularly when you get into technology, there may be a question, are you selling the product one time and that's a one-time sale and you're done? Are you selling a subscription where I'm committing to buy from you every month, every year, however that makes sense? Importantly, you want to make a distinction of whether you're selling direct to the consumer or are you selling direct to a business. And again, the sanity check here is this consistent with how things are sold today? If you had told me, I don't know, 10 years ago that people would be buying shampoo as a subscription in the mail, direct to consumer, I would have thought you were crazy, because at that time, that wasn't how people bought shampoo. It was how people bought Netflix or Amazon Prime, but it had not migrated. The model hadn't migrated to the point where the subscriptions have really, businesses have encouraged subscriptions to the point where, I'm buying my shampoo that way. And I'm continually surprised by how many things you can buy with a subscription. My boyfriend in the car the other day had gotten a new, he has a monthly subscription for a car air freshener, which kind of blew my mind, that existed and that he actually found it to buy. But you want to make sure that, is the way you're planning to sell your product consistent with the market today, or is there a reason that it should be changing? And you want to make sure that you highlight that on this slide. Now, your market size analysis is also, if I had to pick the two most important slides, well, they're all important, but market size is important to go hand in hand with the problem statement. Because if you're sharing a problem on the first slide and people are engaged and want to learn more, what they're probably going to want to learn is, does it make sense to them? And is there market information that would justify that this is a problem for a sufficiently large group of people that it's a good business decision? The way that the market size is communicated in a typical pitch deck uses something very much like the 3 concentric circles on the right. I've seen it as a pyramid. I've seen it using slightly, could be different graphics, but the same imagery of there's a total available market out there for your product. If I am selling, if I have a bakery and I'm selling cupcakes, I would be looking at how many cupcakes the average person eats in a year and multiplying it by 350 million people. That is the total available market for selling cupcakes in the US. But since I'm just starting my first bakery, that's not really who I'm targeting when I start, right? Nobody would really believe that anyway. So you want to look at your serviceable available market, the smaller version of that. And if I'm operating a bakery here in Fairfield County, that's going to be who's going to buy cupcakes from me here. And then smaller than that, your serviceable obtainable market, the SOM, we think of that as who I'm going to target first. And again, that could be geographically people in my neighborhood, people coming to my bakery. And you want to be able to articulate both the large and growing overall market, as well as hopefully a sufficiently large obtainable market that you can tackle on your own with a limited marketing budget. And then we want to demonstrate that's a thoughtful approach to launching your business. So I think that in any case, when you're doing this, when you're doing the work that goes behind this slide, this is one of the slides in the deck that you do need statistics. You do need third-party validation of what you say here. So this is one of the slides where I often see a lot of footnotes on the bottom in case if the data doesn't stand alone as understandable. This is where I'm going to do a commercial for the work I do with the Small Business Development Center at the end, but we have access to the library at UConn. You'd be amazed the market studies that have been done. So you really want to lean into the library or lean into an advisor to help you find market data that will help you do this slide in a really good way. You want to make sure that you're always showing that the market that you're trying to sell into is large and growing with a significant opportunity. Now, your competition's another important slide, important in a different reason, because it's both going to cement you as very knowledgeable in the business that you're in. And it's also going to highlight where you're better. Like a good competition slide is always going to look a little bit like a matrix where the attributes on which you compete go down, down in the rows, and you are the first column, and then your competition follows after that. And you want to make sure that the metrics, it's an opportunity for you to choose the metrics that both highlight what you do well and highlight what your customers do less well or don't do at all. Some people believe that their business is so new and innovative that there is no competition, but that is absolutely never the right thing to write on a slide. There's always the competition of what are people doing instead of what you are offering. So to the extent you have something that you feel like doesn't fit into categories, you can define competition differently, but make sure you acknowledge that there are people out there doing similar things, tangential things, adjacent, and you want to make sure that you can highlight that. What I really like to do, in addition to looking at the metrics, by which I view the industry I'm competing in, I also like to include information and knowledge about how well funded my competition is. And there's a service that we use at UConn. It's called PitchBook that has a lot of this data. I think once you're in capital raise mode, you're probably learning on a weekly basis who's raising what funds, and you'll be on top of that. But it's great to know. You can get information on the capital raised, who the investors were, and sometimes you can even get some valuation data, which supports a lot of the market data that you are also discussing with investors, right? So if one of your competitors who's doing something not quite as well has recently raised $5 million at a $30 million valuation, that's good information that people may want to know. The other important thing to highlight on this slide is how important is it to be first to market, or is this a sector that can handle multiple competitors? Different industries behave differently in this way, and competitive differentiation can look differently, but it's a good opportunity to sort of put the exclamation point at the end of the slide by giving your viewpoint as to how that will be. How are you going to play with the other people that you've chosen to highlight on your slide? Your go-to-market strategy, it almost always looks like a runway that goes across the page, just like I've highlighted it here. And you want to basically highlight your accomplishments to date and give people a roadmap on what you're planning to do. I would caution people, I've had people, the first draft of this slide, everybody wants to have a data point on the runway of everything that spent a lot of money doing up until now, and it ends up looking super crowded. So what I like to do is highlight the really, really big things, the things that took a lot of time, the things that, you know, from an industry standpoint, really make you stand out. Anything that looks like a beta test of your product or introduction to the market, key partnerships, you want to include those here. Certainly pitch competitions 1 is always a good one. And then you want to look out forward, what you're going to achieve and roughly when, if you're able to raise the funding that you're looking for. The important thing, and this goes to probably a whole nother workshop on raising capital, but the proceeds that you're looking for have to tie in a significant, meaningful way to a milestone or a set of milestones that are going to increase the valuation of your business. So you want to keep track of that as you look to raise funds and develop this slide. You want to make sure that you're being mindful of that this amount of bullet point items, they should be on this slide. If you've had thoughts that are around your exit strategy, it's a nice time to put it on there, especially if you're raising capital, because as you know, like, people aren't trying to make investments forever. They're going to want an exit, and they will feel better about investing in you if you are also focused on that exit. If you have a clear vision for what that exit should be or could be, you can add that either on the slide or verbally, that, you know, if you have a vision or a natural acquirer of your business or your product, that often gives investor comfort. Okay. Financial projections. Now, this is a slide, you need to have it, and you need to be careful about what's on it. I will say that once you do a pitch deck and you start to send it out to investors, one thing I'm always wary about is that this could go anywhere. It could land in the inbox of your competition. So you need to figure out a way to accurately describe where you are financially without giving out too much information. You obviously will have done projections for your business that you could then choose to provide to investors as they request them. Bless you, your data room. But I like to have this slide just highlighting enough to give people an idea where you are. Are you pre-revenue? Are you generating revenue? Are you at break even? What is the growth trajectory? And you can almost mask some of the financial details by using growth rates instead to give people an idea of where you are. It's also an opportunity to just add some more metrics of how you look at your business. If you're selling cupcakes and you're trying to get into a wholesale, you might want to keep track of how many wholesale relationships you have as a metric, and you can put that on the chart alongside some growth and maybe skip the revenue or skip your net income, whatever you feel like in your financials tells the story in the best, most accurate way while protecting some privacy. What's important for investors to know, and sort of as a baseline, is that you understand your monthly burn rate and when you're going to hit break even. If that's usually something that when we think about doing revenue projections, we, sort of as a bare minimum, you're going to need a 3-year set of projections. I like to do them monthly for the first 2 years and then annually for 3, 4, and 5. And somewhere in there, you can create a chart of when you hit break even. And that way you're not sharing undue amount of information, but you're giving people a sense of progress towards profitability, which is what they want. As you wrap up your slides, you want to talk about your team. You want to introduce yourself in the most, humble brag that you can do, as well as who's on your team directly and who is helping you grow your business in terms of advisory board or existing investors. So it isn't as important that you show that you've got employees who you're paying a salary to in each of the key positions. It is important to have the broad operational aspects of your business covered either through employees or advisors or mentors. And there are, most businesses started from, from a headcount of 1 that was brought together with key advisors and people who have helped with a discrete part of this. As an example, Felicia was my client, and when she came to me, HAYVN was a pitch deck, and we worked together over a period of time, of a year, I think, meeting monthly, working through her financials, and I helped her get the financing to open HAYVN. And right before we were going to launch the whole, she was going to have her big opening. She invited me to dinner with her other advisors. And it turned out that she'd been meeting with me about weekly. And she'd also been meeting with, I think, 7 other people. And Kim, I know you were there. So she had key advisory board members. I was the person helping her with the numbers, but she had somebody helping her pick out the furniture. Like that was their key expertise. Somebody who was helping her with her software. So she had really amassed a wonderful team that together were able to do this. So that's really what you want to create for yourself. And I think doing that takes an honest look at who needs to be an employee at this point and who doesn't. Where are there gaps in your own skill set or your own confidence level about your skill set. Usually people, I see this more often than not, people are super passionate about their business and not super passionate about QuickBooks or Excel. So do you need a full-time CFO? I doubt it. Like that is something that you can bring in an advisory role or part-time. But you want to make sure that the main tenets of your business and what's going to keep things running are covered in some capacity. And so when you put a slide together, you want the person looking at it to view it in terms of, do I see all the key skill sets that I think I would need covered? Are there some obvious holes? Are there holes that are going to mean that as we grow, they're going to be hindered? And do these people seem confident? Now, I tried to put together a cheat sheet that's going to help if you can do the 12-slide pitch deck, but you actually only have 5 minutes to pitch it. How do you do that? And that what we've seen more recently is, and what if you only have 3 minutes? Now, there are some people that can just deliver all 12 slides very quickly. That usually isn't the best way. So I tried to, for the 5-minute version of this, take out a couple and assume you're going to shorten. And the 3-minute pitch, you're really only going to have an opportunity to dive into the problem solution product and land with your team. There are a lot of opportunities around to practice your pitches. So I know that most people here are here because they're connected with HAYVN in some way. We've had a lot of fun with the HAYVN hatches that we've done. I think there are 3 or 4 of them every year. And the way that you get the chance to apply is to submit your pitch deck so we can review it. Not to say that it has to be final, but it has to be in pretty good shape, which is why we're trying to do these workshops ahead of time. The next one of those, I don't have the exact date, but it will be the end of September. So we'll be looking for pitches to be sent in probably in July. There are also, what I've seen pop up, a lot of opportunities to practice. And this ends up being more of a 3-minute practice. I've seen them, if anybody's on Clubhouse, there's something called pitch practice. You can find the room for it, and you'll get either 1 minute or 3 minutes to talk about your business. It's all audio, and you'll get real feedback from investors and some from the audience. I think there's some also on Twitter Spaces that are doing that too. The 5-minute pitches is that's kind of what we use more in the HAYVN Hatch, or the Ferguson Library has a once a month pitch, the first Wednesday of every month. You can see it on their website, or send me a note and I can invite you into it. But 2 companies pitch every month. It's 5 minutes, and then there's Q&A after it. And then CT Next also has what they call the Entrepreneur Innovation Awards, where you get 5 minutes to do your pitch. So there are lots of opportunities to practice this. And I think the more you practice, the more fun it gets. So now I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to introduce Kim, who you can talk, or I don't know if you have anything you want to share in terms of graphics, but Kim is really the magic who makes a lot of these pitch decks happen for our entrepreneurs within the network.
Thank you. I didn't create any graphics. I thought it would just be easier to talk through some points. So in the past, I've worked with a lot of people that have presented at the HAYVN Hatch, and I would say most every one of them provides me with their initial layout in a PowerPoint format. So they've got their slides, 12 or 10, 12 slides or so, that they've done the rough layout, which is great. It gives me a good idea of the amount of content that's going to be on each slide and some of the basic information. I would say definitely what you need to provide is your logo, if you have one. If you have any colors, if you've done any branding work up to that point, if there's been anything established, fonts that you prefer to use, colors that you prefer to use, your logo. If you have any imagery, photographs, if you have a specific product that you're selling, anything like that that you can provide can help add to, really making the pitch deck unique to your business. So your job is sort of to provide the information, and my job is to make it look compelling. And you can provide it as rough as you want or as designed as you want, as far as I'm concerned. I have some people who really want to get into the weeds and they enjoy the design end of things. So I might receive a deck from them that's pretty well fine-tuned, and then I just kind of go in. I feel like it's sort of like making the bed, where I'm just sort of smoothing out the covers and fluffing the pillows and that kind of thing. And they've already given it to me in great shape. And then some people, just design is not their thing. And I'm basically getting much more just information from them. And then I fancy it up a bit. One thing I don't do as a designer, maybe some other designers are different, but I don't make any suggestions regarding your content or your wording. If it's in there, I'm assuming you want it in there. Like Christine had touched on that one slide, the go-to-market strategy slide, where you say some people tend to put in too much information. I wouldn't look at that and say you need to eliminate some of that. I feel like it's not my job. I don't really know what's happening on your end of things. So if it's in there, I'm going to design with it. So be sure if it's there when it gets to the designer, at least to me, that you do want it in there. And I think Christine mentioned this, to stay light on the text, as simple as as you can make it. I feel like there's so much information in the world that the more scannable and memorable it can be for somebody who's viewing it, that you're really hitting the key points. And that's what I'm trying to do with the design, is make those key points visually memorable as much as can be for the person receiving it. So I think that's about it. I'm just looking at my notes.
I was hoping you could talk about, if somebody's just starting from scratch, where's the best platform? Is it PowerPoint? Is it Google? Like, what do you think is easiest to get going?
I think PowerPoint is fine. And I think it's just, most people have it or have some experience using it. And that's fine if you're completely not, if that just doesn't work for you, if somebody just isn't in that mode, you could just do a Word document or a text. You could provide Word, your content, written content in Word, and then your graphics in some other, send the graphics separately or something like that. I know there's Prezi. I do have a client that uses Prezi. I don't, so I can't really speak to it. But PowerPoint and Google Docs is probably one of the, Google Slides rather is another one of the popular ones. And then there's Keynote, which comes with the Apple computers. But I think I would just recommend sticking with PowerPoint if you can.
Okay. Good. Well,